Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to episode 6. I'm like, wait a minute, that's not 6. Episode 6 of Sipping Tea with Stacey T. You can tell what kind of morning it's been by me thinking 9, it was 6. Forgive me. But welcome. See you guys as you're coming in. It's been one of those mornings. Pardon if I'm sounding a little off because my allergies are bothering me. Everybody's allergies in the house are acting crazy, so it's been an interesting morning filled with coughing and all good things. Good afternoon. Waiting for more people to come on in. Glad that you decided to join me for episode 6. I can't believe we're already on 6, and this one is Scattered Reflections. And I think this is, I think another good topic. I think a topic that we need to all take a moment and think about. And as people are coming in, I do have my tea of the day. For those of you who are going to watch this or come in momentarily or watch this later, every single episode I do try a tea. And today is Twinings Earl Grey Black Tea Jasmine. So we'll see. This one was picked by my mom. So I'm going to open that up again. It is Earl Grey Twinings Jasmine. So I'm going to set that up and let that steep a little bit as people come on in. How's your afternoon going? By the way, I just saw your message. It was sent to my spam. So if you thought I didn't respond, it was sent to, like, not the spam. They don't call it spam on Instagram, but they call it something like not the main thing. And I used to get so many junk emails in that section that I didn't even bother to look. So I just saw it today, like as I was setting this up. So I will respond. I'll respond. Hello, welcome. Just coming in. This is the tea of the live Black Grey Twinings. All right. So I can already tell you just by putting it in, it's interesting because it got dark immediately. Like immediately. So I don't know what that means. I don't know if that's good, bad, or indifferent, but I guess we'll find out shortly. So hopefully everybody's having a good. There is honey on the table. I am actually putting in sugar right now, but I'm going to put some honey in as well because of my throat. I actually have a cough drop in right now, so I apologize. Hopefully you're not hearing that, but if you're seeing a little bit of weirdness with my mouth, that's what's going on with that. Just trying to keep it all the way real with y'all. So, how's everybody's week so far? Yeah, I'm keeping it all the way real. If you're hearing some weird, clicking or whatever, and I have another cough drop on standby, I have some water on standby, it is what it is. Life's, right? And so I got to be ready for that. But how was your week? Was it a good one, hopefully, prayerfully? This is really dark. I can't show you how dark it is. Well, maybe you might be able to see how dark it is. Yeah, so that's how dark it is already. And this mug, I do want to show, it was a busy week for you. This mug was given to me by a friend. I don't know if you'll be able to read this, but it says, "Not a day over fabulous." This was given to me, actually, when I said I was going to start Sipping Tea with Stacey T years ago. A friend bought this for my birthday, kind of encouraging me to do it, and then I didn't do it for 2 more years. But I still have the mug, "Not a day over fabulous." So that's what that is. All right, so it is already super. It is, right? It's a cute mug, and I wish I had brought over. It actually has a little lid that goes on it, and it has like a gold spoon. I was like, okay, I appreciate you. So yeah, I like this mug. So I'm gonna try to, along with the teas, maybe have a different mug every once in a while as well. All right, so again, let me try this and tell you what I think. Though I have to say, it's going to be a little bit tainted because I have a cough drop in. So, let's give it a taste. I actually like this one. I don't know why I didn't expect to, because I feel like I've had Earl Grey tea before, and I wasn't like the biggest fan of it. It kind of, I don't want to say it tastes boring, because I think a lot of people think all teas are boring, but it didn't have like anything that I was like, oh, and maybe it's the jasmine part of it. I'm not quite sure. I'm trying to read what it says. It says delight in the smooth, uplifting taste of this jasmine scented tea. So I don't know, maybe that's the thing that makes it a bit different. Yeah, actually I do like that one. So I'm gonna let it get a little bit darker and see how it matures. I see I have a couple more people that have come in. Welcome. Hopefully your day's going well. Al, I see you came in. Hopefully your live went well, and you guys had a lot of discussion. I'm sure you guys had a lot to talk about. So, I hope that went well. So today I'm going to get into the topic, which is scattered reflections. When I thought about, and when I think about all my topics, I really think about things that kind of I have gone through, or things that I think about, or ways that God is working through me. And so, thinking about scattered reflections, it was something that I feel, looking over my life, I've had a lot of scattered reflections. And for me, and it might mean something a little bit different to all of you, but scattered reflections is the ways that I feel like I have lost myself, or like looked at myself and not recognized the person looking back at me. So have any of you kind of been in that space where, and it may not, obviously not, and it may be literally physical. You look in the mirror and you're like, who in the world is that? Or how did we get here? How did I get all this gray hair? Or how did I start losing my hair? Or when did I start rocking a new wig? Or when did I start doing that at all? I think that, there's obviously phases in our lives where we go through things, and as we age, there are going to be changes, right? Natural changes that occur and happen. But I think that there are points that you're always in that space. That's interesting. Tell me more about that. I think that there are times, and this probably goes to what I said to you on a prior episode, is that I'm very introspective. I, spend a lot of time to myself. And and the funny thing is, even if I'm in a room of people, oftentimes I'm alone in my thoughts. But the reality of it is I've been looking at Stacy a lot lately, and, where she's come from, where she's going, what she's done. I had a conversation with somebody recently, and it's kind of, I think, one of those conversations as you age, you start thinking about anyways, like what have I done with my life type of conversation. And those can go one of two ways. They can get really depressing really quickly because you feel like you haven't done anything, which is never the truth. I think oftentimes we don't think what we've done is enough. I think that we, I think that oftentimes we don't think that the contributions that we made are really contributions. I think we just think we're living our lives, going about each day, and whatever we do is whatever we do. But perfect example this week, and I won't tell you who this happened to, but for me, it was just a beautiful thing, because I, was able to see all the manifestation of this person receiving their flowers. I think, again, sometimes we just go about life and we don't think that anything that we do matters to anyone. And that's never the case. I have to tell you. So if you're thinking that today, walk away knowing that's never the case. That's not true. But it was awesome because I was able to see, people that really went out of their way to like share how important this person was to them. And that's so important. I think that, it doesn't matter how old we get. We need to know that we matter to someone. We need for people to show us that we matter to them. And so for me to be able to see that was awesome. And what it did was it uplifted me, even though it wasn't about me. And it's not like I was taking credit for anything that, this person had done or the accolades that they deserve to get that they got. But it really, sometimes spells out that even though we're in a space that we're kind of like don't recognize ourselves, or, things aren't looking in the direction that we thought that they were going to go, that people see us. People see what we've done. People, and they don't always acknowledge it. Sometimes they do. Sometimes you get your flowers, so to speak, but you don't always. But that's proof positive that even in the smallest gestures and the things that we don't think mean a lot, they mean a lot to someone. I ask where all this gray beard came from every day. Yeah, hey, it happens, right? I think, one day you wake up, and for me, it's interesting because I have a lot of times people will say, wow, Stacey, you look so much like you did when you were in high school. And I'm like, are you looking at my face directly at me? I get that sometimes people say stuff because they don't know what else to say. And I always, I say thank you, but then I look at myself and I'm like, because let me tell you guys, see these? Those are not something that existed before. Those what they call smile lines, those are wrinkles. And I didn't have those. I did not have them suckers before. So I'm like, thanks, but I see those things. I know that everybody else is not like zoning in on those things. But the reason why I want to have this particular conversation or this episode is because I want us to not necessarily see our own scattered reflections, but try to think about the ways that we have impacted other people. And it's not for us to get the glory and for us to give ourselves a pat on the back, though. Let me tell you, sometimes you need to do that, right? Sometimes you need to give yourself that pat on the back. I try to balance it with how far I've come. Yeah, man. Let's go. I mean, you guys know the style and the format of this. You guys are my regulars. So let's go back to how it is that, when I do these episodes, I'm thinking about the stages and the ages. So I go back to, little Stacey that, hadn't really seen much of the world yet, had kind of been insulated in, what I knew and who I knew. It was very, a small section of the world, right? And not to say I have a huge spectrum of the world, but obviously my worldview has been changed just by aging and by seeing the world and by learning people and seeing how people are and how they act has changed, obviously, how I see things. But that Stacey wasn't, for lack of better words, tainted, right? I wasn't as tainted, though again, at every age, if you look back on it, and, at this age, looking back on my childhood, I'm obviously going to see it differently. Hey, Kathy, I'm going to obviously see it differently than I would having been in it, right? Being 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old. But looking at, that person, I'm thinking about, me going into elementary school. And as I've mentioned to you before, grew up in an all-white area, and, saw that people didn't look like me, but it wasn't really that much of a thing. I find that more back then, it was more culture as opposed to specifically just the race as a separator. So like we had neighbors that were like Sicilian, Italian, big food eaters, feeders. They always wanted to feed us, which was lovely. But that was kind of the difference in like culture and we had Irish people on the other side of us. We had, we had somebody who was Polish living like diagonal. So there were differences in that. But it wasn't specific to, me having this melanated skin. I remember specifically when that changed, right? And so I think that for me, that reflection of myself for the first time really changed probably about the 5th grade. And for me, that was the first time that somebody referred to me as the N-word, right? So 5th grade, I'm in, I specifically remember everything about it, like every single thing about it. I could tell you the guy's name who said it to me, but I won't do that. I don't know what the libel laws are, and I'm not trying to get sued. But I can literally tell you his name. I can tell you where I was standing in the lunch line because it happened in the cafeteria. I can tell you the teacher that ended up, grabbing me so that there wasn't an altercation because I was I just needed 2 more seconds. Just 2 more seconds so that I could connect. It didn't happen. But the reality of it is, I remember feeling different after that moment. Another moment that happened in the 5th grade, and I feel like for me that was the time that my reflection of myself was scattered, or even if you want to say shattered or cracked or something of that nature. But I was in school. Obviously, I was 5th grade, like as I mentioned, and that I remember that specific year. The book that we had for history, for social studies, had Aborigines on it. So if you don't know anything about the Aborigines, and I know there are different ages of people watching this, so you may have not had a book that had the Aborigines on the back cover, but distinctly I can still remember that I got the book and I turned it over and there were naked black people on the back. And I was like, what in the blue blazes is this? And they're like, oh, that's the story of we're going to learn about the Aborigines. And I remember being like, but why do we have to have naked black people on the back of this book? It felt off to me. It felt weird to me because I'm like, there's not naked anybody else on the back of this book. So why, is that happening to me? And then, and again, remember, and I'm kind of trying to place this in context so you have an understanding. I'm sitting in this classroom, the only black girl, and we were about to go over the history lesson. The particular history lesson that day was slavery. And I remember sitting there and the teacher said to me, Stacy, we're going to talk about slavery. So she kind of bent down, but it wasn't like this big, let me pull you to my desk and whisper or pull me outside of the room, right? It was so everybody in the room could audibly, the rooms weren't that big, could audibly hear what she was saying to me. Stacy, we're going to talk about slavery. Are you okay with that? And I remember feeling my face get hot because instantly I'm mortified that she's singling me out. 2, I know what slavery is about, so I'm like, this is going to not be like, wow, black people are a great conversation. And so she said, are you okay with that? And instantly, because I was embarrassed, I got mad. And I said, it's in the history lesson, right? So just teach it. Is that the appropriate way to handle yourself, Stacy? No. Were you maybe a little bit rude? Potentially. But the reality of it is that was a moment for me that there was a shift in how I looked at me. And the reason I think that shift took place is because I recognized that other people were now viewing me differently. Or maybe I was seeing how they were looking at me for the first time. So I don't know if you guys had any of those types of, experiences in school, because I know some of you went to very diverse schools, you went to more black schools or that type of thing. But did you ever have an experience in that what they call the formative years of your life that really scattered the reflection that you saw of yourself or shifted it in any way? And whatever you're comfortable sharing, you don't have to, share your personal business. But I think when that happens in those, in that age range, it does impact how you then continue to see yourself. Because that same year, the person that I hung around all the time decided not to take me on a trip where there were not going to be any other people that looked like me, but that was the reasoning, even though we had done everything together up until that point. So I now was like seeing my blackness. I think and again, obviously I grew up in a black house. We're West Indian, so we had the language or the accent, difference, and lots of words that were different, and the foods that we ate were different. So there was that, but we're also, we have a lot of American sensibilities, and a lot of the food we ate was, the regular American fare, American food as well. But again, I really felt for the first time, wow, I'm really like an island unto myself. Again, had family members, had a sibling that was in the school with me, because my sister and I are only 2 years apart. So we always, for the most part, at most points, we were in school for some portion of the time together. And so there was always that. And then in middle school, there were, I think a sprinkling more. And then in high school, an additional dash. So, as I've said to you before, I think I graduated with about 365 students, and I think 5 of us were black. So just to give you kind of the frame of reference for how I was reflecting on myself that is really, when you're young and you don't really understand a lot of the world and how the world works and how people see you outside of, the small circle that you're in, it can be very, very challenging to then navigate when you have these things that kind of shift the way you see yourself. So let me start by asking you, I'm curious, when did you become aware of who you were in a way that was different than you had ever thought? So was it in elementary school? Was it in middle school? Was it in high school for you? When did you see yourself as different than? So you might have been like, I'm a regular schmegular person. I do the regular, regular stuff that people do, regular schmegular stuff. But now all of a sudden you're feeling very different from how you've always seen yourself. Because how I always saw myself was the tomboy that, played with all the other kids, and people, tended to like me and want to hang around. So I saw myself as that. And then all of a sudden I realized that I was getting kind of closed out of groups. I was getting eliminated from, hanging out with people or opportunities. And I had seen some of this happen to my siblings as well. But I think for me, going back and as I was trying to think about this particular episode and how it came to me, is that was kind of a really formative experience for me. And it did carry out through my middle school experience. Absolutely. They called you, all right, I'm seeing this, called me mental black girl, all because I was in special education. Man, let me just tell you, kids are nasty. Hey, Alex. Kids, Alexandra, sorry. Kids are nasty. The reality of how kids treat other children is rough. It is absolutely, positively rough. I remember how people used to talk about special education students. The names that people call, and back then, by the way, half the names that are used now were not, people didn't care about it then. People said all sorts of crazy junk. And we know people had no filter. There wasn't obviously you can't say this, you can't say that as well. Let's see here. When I heard how friends all attended parties I didn't know about. Let me tell you, it was so funny. Especially, it happened in middle school, but in high school, people were like, oh, you remember so-and-so's party? And I was like, no. Didn't you go to such and such? No. People didn't invite me to Jack either. So I think it's funny, but that is, as you say that, I'm laughing now. But when I first heard it, I'm like, wow, people really don't include me in stuff. I'm gonna say a black sheep, pun intended, I guess, in that area. But yeah, that can be absolutely a time when you recognize that you are being othered hardcore. All right, let's see. The principal was one of the people doing it. For you, it was the time in elementary school that you're quiet and timid, and you were made fun of a lot, and there was a lot of, I thought there was something wrong with me. Man, I'm telling you, like I said, kids can be really, really harsh, and it can be very, it can be really painful when you are just being yourself, right? And I think that one of the things, as I'm not a parent, but as you see, the role of a parent is to encourage their kids, to make you feel like you can achieve, to make you feel, safe and normal, and being able to be adventurous and try new things and learn and feel comfortable in your skin, right? That's the role of a parent. And so, a good parent does that. And then you feel that all those things, but then you have to go out into the world, right? So now you're out in the world and these people are nasty. These people are being absolutely nasty to you. And so that can be really tough. That can be really tough. All right. I'm trying to see what else you guys are writing. So it was the principal that did those things. Yeah. It's crazy. I can't even express, why they do those things, but yeah. Unfortunately, I've seen a lot of adults be the biggest problem, and I think we're seeing that now, right? I mean, this is the thing. You have people talk about, how young kids are bullies. Well, those bullies do grow up, and unless somebody checks them, we deal with them in the workplace, or we deal with them at church, or we deal with them in the grocery store. Yeah. My mental health was affected until college because of what my peers would throw at me. Woo! First of all, thank you guys for sharing, stuff that is personal and challenging and raw. But yeah, I think that, well, I know that some of these kids were oftentimes what I've recognized, and when I was teaching, I saw a lot of this, is a lot of the kids that are bullies in school are being bullied at home, and because they have no power there, they decide to take it out on you. Isn't that so wonderful of them? So yeah, that's what happens, unfortunately. But I'm glad that, again, you see a lot of, and this has happened to more and more at, I think, younger and younger ages, is young kids not knowing how to manage that. How do you look at, because you're just taught to, I don't know if you've seen any of these videos online where a parent will say, okay, we're going to step in the mirror before you go to school, and you're going to say, you're beautiful, you're worthy, you're smart, you're kind, right? They'll have you do all these affirmations and say all these wonderful things to yourself to kind of establish this is how your day is going to go. We're not going to let whatever else happens outside of this house set the tone for your day. I think it's wonderful. The reality of it is, those kids at school don't give two cruds about what you're doing at home, right? They don't care at all that you're trying to establish yourself, a child that is, powerful within themselves, that they feel confident within themselves. They don't care about that. They may have had a horrible day, may have come from a screaming environment, may have come from an abusive environment, may feel like they have no value. And so what they're going to do is tear you down all day long. And now you have to try to manage that, and you have to manage how you might have already been feeling about yourselves, and now try to achieve and do well in school and all the things. And you have a lot of kids that are not managing that well. When I hear about, kids in middle school, taking their lives, it is devastating to me. It is devastating to me. And a lot of times it's bullying. It's bullying. It has taught me to speak up for my kid. The funny thing is, a lot of the things that we go through, a lot of what we go through as we navigate the world for ourselves, and a lot of the torture or trauma that we might have gone through as kids does equip us to help and advocate in the future. I definitely have advocated for a lot of people, just even knowing that they can speak up for themselves, affirming that they have a right to be in the spaces that they're in. When I was on the school committee, I saw a lot of young people who were like, oh, I don't really like this, but it's not my place. It's that they're the ones to make the decisions. Like, why would I even say anything? It doesn't matter if what they are doing changes. It matters that you think that you don't have a right to say what you have to say. And now we're in a time and a place where people are petrified to say anything, right? Because as soon as you open your mouth, you're attacked. Or, even worse nowadays, right? So, it's a really, I feel like we're literally teetering on a very interesting period in time. But going back to that person that I was in elementary school, and then in middle school. In middle school, I, was, your body is growing and developing, so you're feeling weird in your body anyways. So I feel like my constant view of myself, my constant reflection was all over the place in middle school. I was like, who is this person? I don't understand what's going on. I'm a tomboy, and now my body's developing, and I was like, I don't know what the world is happening. And then I'm going into high school, and I'm just feeling super awkward. And then again, you have everybody has stuff. Lives. Regardless of what other people are doing, life continues to life. And so you have all the other things that you have to manage on top of, looking in the mirror. And I remember I did not, and people, and this is a real thing. I remember, people saying, oh, Stacy, you're pretty, and me looking at them like they were nuts. Like literally being like, okay, thanks. Right? And almost being like irritated that they were saying that. Partially because I feel like in truth, I thought they were trying to make fun of me. Right? I'm like, yeah, okay, I know how you really feel, but thanks for saying something like that. Going into college when I will never forget the space that I was in. It's this place called Addie's. I was, up there with this young woman I had met from college. We had come from our choir rehearsal because I was in the choir, which was fantastic because choir was also a class. So I was getting credit for being in the gospel choir. So in any event, we went after rehearsal, we went to Addie's to get a snack, to get food. And there were like guys from the football team that were over there. When I say I was like so uncomfortable because I saw people looking at me and I had no idea how to handle that. I felt like I was out of my body, out of my skin. And I remember my friend saying, "Stacy, they want to talk to you." And I was like, "For what?" Like, what do they want? And she's like, "One of them likes you." And I was like, "Why?" Because again, going back to the person that was looking at my reflection at that point was so scattered. When I looked at myself, I was like, ugh. Because I would look at myself and then I would look at these other young women from all these other places that for me they had better clothes, or they had better shape, or they were lighter skinned, or they were darker skinned, or I just thought they were more pretty, or they were pretty and I wasn't. I thought I was awkward. And lightweight, still am awkward, by the way. But I couldn't see anything outside of like this wobbly reflection, right? This scattered reflection. So when people were saying different things, I really, truly, and honestly, to this day, still have a hard time with it. But that was the worst period of time because it was so off how I perceived myself as opposed to how other people saw me. And so that was identity crisis during the teenage years was real. Man, teenage years are are something. They're not for the faint of heart. They really are. It's so much that happens during that time. Beyond your physical body changing, you're trying to get into school if college is a thing, or you're trying to get into a trade, or figuring out what your life is going to be. Yeah, but you are pretty, lol. Ha 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 ha. Yes, you are. Correct. You are pretty. Thank you for saying that about yourself. You are pretty. I'm glad you realize that. But the reality of it is, it is very difficult that whole period of time. But the problem is if your reflection is already wobbly, it's already scattered as a teenager, when does that get corrected? When does it get corrected? I mean, the reality of it is, if you're seeing yourself in this wobbly space, and I don't know, I feel like maybe every teenager does have some sort of some sense of a wobbly or a scattered reflection, right? I don't think that you come into knowing who you are, whatever that means, at that early age anyway. So I do get that that's going to be, a normal thing. But I feel like some people have less of a scattered reflection than others. And there may be a host of reasons for that. It could be that they have a really, what people call a very normal upbringing, right? Where they have, parents that are, attentive and are, they're in their home, they're financially stable and, that type of thing, right? They have a good relationship with God. There may be all those things that make their upbringing more stable, right, than some other people. And so, I think that what happens is let's say now you're 20, maybe you're even 21 years old. You've just now kind of hit over the teenage hump, right? So, I always say, I laugh because people are like, oh, when you turn 20, you're not a teenager yet. And I get that. But I think that there's still like that extra hump of learning that takes place. When you're 21, you are still a baby. You are still a baby. Think back to your 21-year-old self. And what is it that you thought your life would be as opposed to what it is right now? And I think this goes back to a lot of this is, what I talked about in, people not dreaming anymore and all this stuff. I think that has a real component of it. But I think that also the reality is we don't know, right? You have this whole doe-eyed look at the world, right? You have this like open eyes and the sky is the limit. Okay, that's true. And then there's also reality that does set in, right? Because we all have that. Now you have reality trying to marry this doe-eyed, like the way that you view things. And so now look at the mirror, and who is that person? Right? Because you're literally battling, especially when you're about 21, 22, 23, because if you're in college, you're about to graduate, and you're trying to figure out what in the world am I going to do with my life. Some people, are very regimented and planned. They have an internship and they have a job lined up and all the things, right? This generation right now may have an internship, they may have a job lined up, but many of them will not be able to just graduate college and get an apartment or get a house because the market is really rough, right? So what they may have intention, their game plan may be a little bit different than what their reflection is kind of posing back to them. The family support system is important. The outside world may make you see yourself as one way, but strong family support will affirm who you are. That is absolutely the truth. The world will always make you feel some type of way about who you are and what you've been doing, and are you worthy to be in the spaces. That's why I talk about that a lot, and I'm sure you've picked up on certain things that I say often. But, being in the space, being able to be in the space, walking with your head held high into any room that you choose to is your right, right? It is your right. And unfortunately, we have been taught that that's not our right. There are only so many people that are allowed to be in that room. There's only so many people that are allowed to sit at the table. There's only so many opinions that we care to hear. There's only so many smart people and people that can make the final choice and people that can rise to this rank or be promoted. We're taught that, and it's not the truth. So now we may, have all this knowledge, and we look in the mirror and we have, maybe we've gotten to the point where we've started to affirm ourselves, but the word is consistently telling you, nah, you're not supposed to be in that room. You're not supposed to be in that seat. We don't want to hear what you have to say. Guess what? Say it anyways. Say it anyways. I feel like the more that and this has been something that I've learned about myself, I would say in the last couple years, is the more that I affirm myself, the better my ability to see my reflection without that wobbly, scattered look, the more that starts to take shape. I am fortunate because I do have a small circle of people that affirm me, right? They say, Stacey, you're smart enough, and we love you, and you can do it, and just keep leaning on God. Like whatever they know that I need, I'm getting from that small group. And when they can't, I'm getting it from God. And I quite frankly get it from him first. But there are days that you're going to be down. There are going to be times when you're not able to lift your head up as far as, encourage yourself. And that's when those people make all the difference for you, right? When you're just feeling a little not great, feeling a little cruddy, you're having a hard time. And that's when those people help you to look at your reflection and see what it is. Because let me tell you, this world will make your reflection warped. And if you continue to let it, you'll look at yourself and who is this person? Who is Stacey? This is not at all who I thought she was going to be. This is not at all who she is. This is not at all who she's called to be. So I'm now looking at this person that I don't even recognize, but I let it happen. Right? You can't, there's only so much control that other people can have over you. And the reality of it is you give them that control. And I can't remember who said this to me, but And it was years and years and years ago. But, you know, people will try to make you angry, right? But if you allow for people to make you angry consistently or to change your mood, you're giving them control over you. And when I remember hearing that, I was like, oh, no, no, no. I did not want for people to do that. I don't want people to have control over my mood and if I'm having a good day or a bad day. But the same thing is true of how I see myself. I don't want to give people the power to do that. I don't want to give myself the power to do that. If I'm going to be entirely honest, that has to be a God thing. I need for him to show me what I look like, because he sees my heart, right? And so sometimes even I look at myself and I'm like, ugh, really, Stacey? Like, this is where we're at. This is what we're doing. But he's like, no, 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 no. Like, there's more. Because when opportunity closes, doors seem to be closing, life doesn't seem to be going in the speed, time, direction that you thought it was going to be, you look at yourself and you're like, what have I done wrong? Right? What is this a punishment? Like, what's happening in this season at this moment? And that's when you have to recognize that sometimes you're seeing yourself through the lens of pain. Sometimes you're seeing your reflection through the lens of trauma. Sometimes you're seeing your reflection in the lens of feeling hurt or confused or let down or whatever. But the beautiful thing is that God doesn't see that, because he doesn't have those lenses. There's a scripture that says, you want the scales to fall off your eyes so you can see the truth. And he sees the truth because he is truth. We don't always see the truth, even of our own reflections. You can look at your own face and see a lie because you're not able to see all your beauty. All you see is flaws. I remember I did this workshop before and I had women look at their faces and say, tell me something good about yourself. And I remember when they looked in the mirror, and I called the particular class mirror. And there were lots of other things that I had them do. But when they looked at themselves, I remember hearing, ugh, from a lot of people, men and women, right? Ugh. And I was like, wow, that's the first reaction that people have by looking at their own physical self. What is that? Where does that come from? Why do we do that to ourselves? And what standard are we holding ourselves up to? Are we holding ourselves up to a standard of, a perfection? Because let me tell you, Stacey doesn't look like, this was like a thing. This is a thing that I do because I want to look lovely for y'all. But this is not Stacey 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's just not. And I have no desire for that to be the case. I love makeup. I love dressing up. I love that whole, thing. But there's days that this is not on. And it's just regular Stacey with no lipstick and my eyebrows not looking as beautiful as they do right now. You just hit the nail on the head. Sometimes we give others too much control. We absolutely 100%. But let's think about that. Let's go back to our childhood. When we're taught about how to look, right? Because if you were raised in most households, don't go out of this house looking crazy, right? You are told to have a specific image, not for you, but for how others would view you, right? So it wasn't like, hey, I want you to feel good about yourself, and so let's put this on so you feel good about yourself. It was, we don't want to go out this house and people are going to look at you and think I raised animals, right? They're going to think that I don't care about how my kids look. They can come out the house looking any old type of way. That's how we're taught to look at ourselves. So it's through the lens of literally saying, okay, if we don't look this certain way and we go out, then guess what? That means that we're now bringing shame on the family. So a lot of how, from a young kid, your parents would shellac your hair down. They would make sure you had nothing in your nose. They'd make sure you had nothing in your teeth. And that's decent. They should continue to do that. But everything was literally not based on, hey, I want you to feel good about yourself. It's, I want to make sure that other people think I'm taking care of my kids in the right way, right? And that's how a lot of people view themselves. So when you're looking at your reflection, is your reflection, do you do what you do for even just your physical body? Do you do it for you, or do you do it because, you know, somebody's telling you have to, whether it's the doctor, whether it's, you know, somebody complaining about how you look, what is the reason? What is your catalyst for doing that? Hey, Sean, what is your catalyst for doing that? I'm just looking for my mask. You're a mess. You are a mess. But the reality of it is, we definitely, without a doubt, give other people more control over, you know, over us, just in general, how we feel about ourselves, all the things. And so now we're all adults on here, and we have to look at that. When we look at ourselves, what is it that we see? When you look at yourselves, and anybody who's, you know, comfortable at answering that, when you look at yourself, what is it that you see now? Do you see someone who, you know, you feel is confident? Do you see someone who you feel is a change maker? Do you see someone who you think is beautiful or handsome? Do you see somebody who you think is powerful? Do you see wisdom in your face? What is it that you see in your face? Or are you still looking at yourself as a scattered reflection that you were taught to see yourself when you were younger? And again, that's something that we have to all, and this is something that we all have to think about. And I'm thinking, as I'm talking to you right now, I'm like, man, as I'm looking at myself, because, you know, I'm talking and obviously looking at myself at the same time, what is it that I see about Stacy that, you know, I think is an actual reflection? Because I don't want to continue at my age, at my grown age, almost 50 years old, continue to look at myself and see this scattered reflection. Because the reflection that I need to see is who I am as a person right now, the things that I've done, the impact that I have right now. It can't continue to be, you know, what other people think of me, or you know, what I think I haven't done. And I think oftentimes a lot of our reflection, when we look at ourselves or look back on our lives, a lot of it is, man, I haven't done this, I haven't done that. If I were to look at all of my situations, right? If my situations in life were to be my sole measure of my reflections, man, and I think the reality is a lot of us would be depressed, right? Like, man, this is it. God, there got to be more than this, right? I want you to start thinking about, you know, how you see yourselves. Are you giving yourself grace as you manage life? Or are you beating yourself up because you're not where you thought you should be? You're not making the money you thought you should be. You're not with the person you thought you should be. You're not living in the house or the apartment that you thought you should, or even in the city or state that you thought you should be. I think that oftentimes so much external, and I talked about intrinsic and extrinsic motivators last time, but there's so much about how we live our life that is external. What is internal to us? What makes us look at us and say, you know, you're not half bad? And I'm not saying you need to look in the mirror and be like, man, you are fly. And if you want to do that, that's cool too. But I remember for me, because I told you that I did not feel attractive, like physically as a person, for a long time. And I remember there was one day, and it was, I think, freshman or maybe sophomore year in college, in my dorm room, just like lonely. All my friends were like out on dates and like doing the thing, and I was like literally sitting in my room on a Friday night doing nothing by myself, watching TV. And I started crying, and I was like what is wrong that, you know, I like nobody finds me that way? But it was me holding on to how I saw myself, me feeling less than. And if you feel like you're less than, you're projecting that. That's not an attractive thing. I remember the next day I woke up, and literally it was the next day I woke up, and I looked in the mirror, and the thing that I said was, you're not that bad. Now that doesn't sound like a victory, but let me tell you, it was. Because when you're going from a person who doesn't feel attractiveness about themselves at all to somebody who's like, that's not that bad, that was a win. That was a serious win. Honestly, no, I did not give myself grace. Why is that? Probably because you were taught not to. You were taught to do, like go, 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 go. Achieve, do this, do that, do, like, we don't take the time. And this is not, oftentimes I'm really happy about this ability for me to talk to you all about this and through this, because for me, it's also looking back on the fact that there's no manual for growing up, right? Everybody does it differently, and you're never taught to do it, right? So you just have to kind of live your life, and we all figure this out. Even parents, there's no manual for parenting, right? You don't get a kid at the hospital and they're like, this is how you raise this kid. Good luck and God bless, right? They send you home maybe with some wipes and some bottles, some formulas, and I think for a while people are getting car seats, and then they say, good luck, keep the thing alive, right? And you're like, oh, what do I do with this? And I don't care how many books you read, there's going to be things that you discover that no book talks about, right? But how over time has your reflection, because when babies first like see their reflection, they're kind of, wow. Like they're like looking at their face, and they're noticing that when they move their head, that's their head. And they're like then examining their face, and there's a wonder about how you look, the reflection that you cast. As I said, over time, what happens? Viewing ourselves negatively is what the enemy wants. We have to view ourselves how God sees us. But I believe that's 100% true. How do we do that if we don't have a relationship, though? That's a whole nother topic. You learn every day being a parent. Yeah, I'm sure you do. I mean, I learn every day being a human being, being a sister, being a daughter, being a friend. I learn every day. So of course you're going to learn every day. But again, there's no grace, because I know that a lot of people, blame things on their parents for their upbringing. And I'm not saying that some of the things that parents did wasn't jacked up, but there's a certain point in time where you're like, okay, I'm like almost 50 years old. I have to figure out like how to move on from that, because that they parented me a long time ago at this point. Being a parent is a daily on the job training. I'm sure it is. I am sure it is. And I know that some of those hirees, aka your kids, give you a run for your money. I'm sure they do. Well, I'm hoping that kind of talking about our reflections get us to really look at our reflections. And I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you to look in the mirror. And I'm not saying you need to do it right now, but today, tomorrow, look in the mirror and tell yourself the positive things. I'm sure I could have some of y'all that would spend all day telling yourselves the negative things. But I want you to speak positivity into yourself. I want you to speak something happy into yourself, into your life. I think it's important that we start doing that. Even if it sounds, and I had to do that for a long time. And there's still days that I'm like, I look at myself and I'm like, ugh, your skin looks horrible. This is not right. Blah, 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 right? So there's still going to be those days, and there still are those days for me. But I also am able to be like, all right, yeah, you put yourself together all right today. Like, I'm able to do that. So there's still that ability. I want you to, look at yourself, because you were created in a perfect image, right? So I want you to be able to see those things about you. Don't let recognize what scatters or shatters or makes your reflection wobbly. And it might be the people you hang around, and some of those people are negative. Girl, why you wear that clothes? That looks crazy on you. Your hair looks this, that, and the other. Man, you done gained weight. Man, you done lost weight. Like, there are some people that they have nothing better to do than critique and criticize. That's what they do. But that doesn't mean you need to give them a lot of time and energy, because that is exhausting when your goal and your job is to affirm yourself, is to be able to see your pure and true reflection. That doesn't mean there aren't going to be things that you need to work on or things that you want to work on, because what you're now seeing is not tainted. It's the real you, and you're like, okay, the real me still needs work, and that's honest and that's fair, but I don't want you beating yourself up by somebody else's influence on how you see yourself. Okay, so that's your assignment. Get to it. Hopefully it is helpful to you, and I'm going to be taking my own advice. I have been actually trying to do it a little bit more, look at myself and say, all right, Stacy, you're good. And again, it's challenging, especially when you have a lot of outside stuff happening. You guys know, I'm still looking for employment, but God told me to do this, and I'm moving forward doing it. So, yeah. So that's how that is. So I'm basically taking my own medicine first, is what I'm getting at. All right, with that, next week we have a special guest. So I'm doing my first collaboration. Next week is going to be about makeup. And it's about makeup because obviously I love makeup. But a lot of my guy friends really have been talking about makeup being, some of the women looking like Decepticons. Because when they take off their makeup, they're like, who is this chick? I didn't recognize her at all. So I am going to be doing a collaboration with Cree Lux Beauty, and I'll let her kind of, tell you a little bit about her journey and so on and so forth. She will be doing an actual look on the live. So I'm hoping what she'll be able to do is one look that is kind of a normal look, and on the other side of her face, something that really changes, how the face looks. Makeup is supposed to be a beautiful thing, and it can be artistic as well. So everybody has a feeling about it. So it's called Makeup: The Art of Deception ? So please come for that one. That one's next Saturday at 1:00. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining and share this. It is also on YouTube. So after this, I always upload them to my YouTube. All of my episodes are on my YouTube. So feel free to look there. I'm also trying to expand a little bit more into my TikTok, but I do have TikTok. So check me out there. And obviously on my Instagrams. The fellas are sitting next week out. Nah, you guys need to come and talk about all your complaints about makeup and how women look like Decepticons, and you thought this woman was one thing, and then all of a sudden you turned around and the rain hit her face and she looked different. Y'all talk enough mess. So you guys should be there to check that one out as well. So in any event, I just want to thank you all, as I said, for supporting me in this journey. As I say at the end of every one of my episodes, be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, and please extend to yourself and to me a measure of grace. I will see you next Saturday, 1:00. Bye, everyone.